So some waiver wire help for week one. So some quarterbacks to check out if you are looking for a quarterback um, from week one. Obviously Alex Smith had a really good week. Now we don't know if Alex Smith is going to have that type of week again this week. He's playing Philadelphia. He could have a good week. He could have his normal week. Trevor Simeon. Simeon had an all right game against the Chargers. He's not a guy that I would necessarily want, but he had 26 points week one. Pretty good amount of points for week one. He's a guy. Not as many as Alex Smith. Bortles, I don't like Bortles. Stay away from Bortles. And then he just lost Allen Robinson. Flacco's a guy that he's playing Cleveland this week. You might look at him, but I don't know about that. Mike Glennon, he's going back to Tampa Bay where he used to play. I don't know about that one. I don't like Josh McCown. Looks like Brissett's going to be the starter for the Colts. I don't like that one. Jay Cut, I don't like that one. One that's not that great this week, but maybe it'll be better throughout the year. Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is a guy that you could definitely add. This week he's probably not going to have that great of a game, but I was impressed with him week one. So top three quarterbacks, week one I would say after week one I would say 1 Alex Smith, 2 Carson Wentz, 3 Trevor Simeon. Sam Bradford's a guy that's usually in leagues that you could also add. So watch Sam Bradford. He's another good one. So some running backs. My top 2 running backs for this week are Kerwin Williams. I think he's going to replace David Johnson. And then my other one is Tariq Cohen. I don't know if Tariq Cohen's going to have as big of a game, but I think he's someone that you definitely want to add for future reference-wise throughout this year. Chris Thompson had a pretty good game. Shane Vereen caught some good passes in the second half if you're in PPR. Shane Vereen and Duke Johnson are some good backs, Chris Thompson included. And then running backs is really hard to go by. We talk about, if Chris Johnson comes back to the Cardinals, he could be somebody. Marlon Mack had he had a touchdown in his first game. You don't look at him to have a touchdown every week, though, or that often. Some other ones that I can think of, Jared McKinnon, he's a guy that you probably don't want to add. Jamal Charles had an all right game, but then he fumbled. No TDs. He probably won't be a guy featured on the goal line. Running backs are really hard to come by. You really have to pick up a guy that gets injured. So I think Kerwin Williams is your best bet at picking up a running back right now. And then I'd go Tariq Cohen. The reason you like Tariq Cohen is how featured he was in the offense last week. He got a lot of playing time. He performed very well, and he scored a touchdown too. So even though he's the backup, I think he's probably one of the top guys to pick up fantasy-wise this week. Wide receiver-wise, I've already picked up Kenny Golladay before this week, but he's a guy that's probably not on anybody's team. Kenny Golladay, very good wide receiver. He had, I think about 20 points in fantasy leagues, 22 in PPR, 2 touchdowns. Very good. Paul Richardson's a guy. He's the number 2 wide receiver at Seattle right now. Josh Dotson, Jeremy Curley just went back to the Jets. J.J. Nelson caught a touchdown pass last week. He could be a guy. Marquise Lee and Allen Hurns are guys that I like right now because Allen Robinson out. Taylor Gabriel is another good wide receiver. Slot guy for Atlanta. Sammy Coates, Zay Jones, some other guys that could emerge as some talent. And then Kendall Wright, with the injuries that the Bears have had at wide receiver, Kendall Wright could start to get a lot more looks. Terrence Williams had a real good week one. He's somebody that you might add. Devin Funches, I don't know if he played week one. I don't think he did a whole lot. He's a guy that I've talked about this year. Philip Dorsett. Philip Dorsett's someone that New England traded for. I thought about adding Dorsett earlier. I think Dorsett's going to be a bigger part of this offense now once he learns it. Tavon Austin, another one. Adam Humphries, he didn't play week one, but he's a little slot guy that Jameis Winston likes to throw to. Brandon Coleman played pretty good his first game. He was probably the most targeted receiver for Breeze, but at the same time with Snead coming back, you can't really plan a lot. Russell Shepard had a TD for Carolina. You know, Carolina, other than having Kevin Benjamin and Greg Olson, their wide receivers are kind of unknown. Cooper Kupp had a TD and about 70 yards receiving. I'd watch Cooper Kupp this year. He's a guy that I've always been high on since he was in college. So Cooper Kupp had a good first game. He's a guy that you could put at your flex. Benny Fowler had 2 TDs for Denver. That's another guy. Torrey Smith didn't have a terrible game. Seth Roberts, he's a touchdown machine. He's always catching touchdowns. If you ever are in a situation where you need a wide receiver, I'd start Seth Roberts at like your flex. He's always scoring TDs. He's a big, tall receiver. For some reason, Amari Cooper doesn't catch a lot of TDs. Crabtree does, but for some reason Seth Roberts is always found around the goal line. Nelson Aguilar had a real good game. He caught a long TD pass. I wouldn't feed into it too much until he does more. And then Jermaine Kearse, he just came over from Seattle. He's with the Jets now. He caught a couple of passes week 1. I could see him becoming one of the guys. Laquan Treadwell is the slot guy, and he only caught 1 pass last night. I could see him as another guy you might add later. So those are some guys at wide receiver. Tight end, I really like what's his name? Austin Hooper. I was hung on Austin Hooper at the first of the year. He kind of fell, and he wasn't drafted by a lot of people, honestly. So Austin Hooper, I remember watching him in the Super Bowl last year, and in the playoffs he played really well. He became one of his more favorite targets. So I like Hooper. He had a big week, so he's going to be hard to get. But he's a good one. Charles Clay had a big week. He had a TD. Jesse James had a good week. Some guys that didn't have as much of like a big week, but I wouldn't mind grabbing Zach Miller, Cameron Bray. Cameron Bray didn't get to play, so there's that. In Cleveland had David Nwoku and Seth Diwali. He caught actually 3 passes. Those 2 tight ends. Virgil Green, tight end for the Broncos, a little security blanket for Simeon. He had 4 points last week. Nothing crazy. And then another guy I would say, I heard Jordan Reed is having some issues with his broken toe. So if he goes down, a very good option to replace him with is going to be Vernon Davis. And so kicker-wise, in my league, I know it's different for everybody, but just some of the guys that are available in my league that I like. Chris Boswell, they went ahead and kicked field goals. They didn't go for 2. I like Chris Boswell. Jason Myers kicked a good amount of field goals. He always does for Jacksonville. And then Georgie Tavecchio for Oakland. He's my top guy of the week that I would add. I'd ride him until Janikowski comes back. I really like him. I really like what I saw out of him. Phil Dawson is another guy that I like. He missed a field goal, though, so watch him. And then Ryan Suckup had a really big week. I know he's probably taken in most leagues, but he'll probably be taken this next week too. But I like Ryan Suckup, and Blair Walsh is another good one to pick up. Those 2 guys are probably the top kickers. And then defensively, obviously Jacksonville and the Rams defenses got picked up. I'm not as high on them, though. I might pick up Jacksonville's defense to see if it pans out or not, but I'm not too high on the Rams defense. I think that was more about the Colts. Some teams, though, that I would pick up, Chargers is one. They had some turnovers last night, but not as much Chargers. I like the Ravens and I like Steelers are the big defenses that I like. I've kind of liked them for most of the year, though. With T.J. Ward being added to the Bucks, Bucks could be another team that could be one of the teams. Eagles is another team that I like. I don't like them this week as much going against Kansas City. So you might want to watch that. And then Detroit Lions defense is another defense that I like. They don't create a whole lot of turnovers, but they get a good amount of sacks and they don't give up a lot of points. So I like them for that. And those are some waiver wire pickups for week 1.